Imagine looking at a horse race, not as a game of luck, but as a giant math problem. A problem that, if you could just solve it, would be worth nearly $1 billion. Well, that's exactly what Bill Benter, a physicist turned pro gambler, actually did. He took on the biggest horse racing market in the world, and, using pure math, he cracked a code. Let's break down how he pulled off this incredible feat.
First off, you got to understand the sheer difficulty of the challenge. See, horse racing uses what's called parimutuel betting. This isn't Vegas where you're just betting against the house. Nope, here all the money from all the bettors goes into one giant pool. Then the racetrack just takes a massive cut right off the top. We're talking around 19% in Hong Kong, and then the winners get to split whatever's left. It is a negative-sum game by its very design. For you to win, someone else has to lose, and you have to somehow overcome that giant commission on every single bet.
So who was this guy who dared to even try this? Bill Benter wasn't your typical gambler. He actually cut his teeth back in the 70s on the Las Vegas blackjack scene, completely mastering card counting. But, casinos aren't too fond of that. So after getting banned, he set his sights on an even bigger prize, the Hong Kong horse racing market, where the betting pools were just astronomical. By 1988, he launched his syndicate armed with a computer and a pretty radical idea to treat the racetrack like it was the stock market.
To beat the system, Benter knew he had to understand it on a deep mathematical level. He wasn't looking for a lucky horse. He was hunting for a fundamental flaw in the market's own logic.
So here's how it really works. The odds on any horse, they aren't set by some expert. They're determined entirely by the collective bets of the public. If a horse has 10-to-1 odds, it just means the public has bet about 10 times more money on all the other horses combined. In this system, you are not betting against the house. You're betting against the collective wisdom, or, the folly of the entire crowd.
And that right there is the billion-dollar question. If the track is guaranteed to skim almost a fifth of all the money off the top, how on earth can you find a consistent, profitable edge? Where is the vulnerability in a system that seems totally ironclad?
The answer? It lies in the crowd itself. Benter realized that while the public is pretty smart collectively, it's not perfect. Bettors have these predictable biases. They might overvalue a horse that just won or bet too much on a famous jockey. These tiny, consistent errors in judgment, that was the market inefficiency he could exploit. So Benter's solution was this really elegant two-part blueprint. It was a strategy designed not to guess winners, but to systematically take advantage of those public biases.
First, he built this powerful statistical model to calculate a horse's true probability of winning, based on nothing but cold hard data. But then, and this is the absolute genius part, he created a second model to fuse his own predictions with the public's odds, essentially using the crowd's own wisdom to perfect his system. His first step was building that fundamental model. And this thing was a beast. We're talking analyzing over 120 different factors for every single horse. Things like its past performance, the jockey's skill level, the track conditions, even how much rest the horse got since its last race. The goal was to create a purely objective, data-driven prediction of how a race would likely turn out.
But here's the twist in the story. After all that incredible work, Benter discovered something absolutely terrifying. On its own, his incredibly sophisticated model was a money-losing machine. It was systematically biased in a way that would have completely bankrupted it.
This table right here shows the core of the problem. Whenever Benter's model found what it thought was a fantastic bet, a horse the public was totally ignoring, that horse would consistently underperform. The model was, for lack of a better word, arrogant. It was missing some crucial piece of information that the public somehow knew, and betting against the crowd was a guaranteed way to lose all your money. Benter's great insight is captured perfectly in his own words. He realized his model just couldn't account for everything. Things like a trainer's secret plan, a horse's mood that day, or other inside information. But the public's odds? They did seem to reflect that hidden knowledge. The crowd's opinion wasn't the enemy, it was the missing piece of the puzzle. And this led to his big breakthrough. Instead of trying to fight the crowd, Benter decided to join it. He built a second model whose whole job was to blend his data with the public's odds. By combining these two experts, his algorithm and the crowd's collective wisdom, he created a final unbiased prediction. And this combined estimate, it was incredibly accurate and, more importantly, profitable.
So, the system was built. The code was cracked. But the real question is, did it actually work? Well, the results were nothing short of spectacular.
Here's the statistical proof. The public's odds, on their own, were pretty good at picking winners. Benter's model, by itself, was slightly better. But the combined model?
Wow, it was significantly more powerful than either one alone. This was the hard data that proved his hybrid strategy was the real deal.
And that predictive power translated directly into profit. The system delivered a staggering 24% return on investment. Now remember, the track was taking about 19% off the top of every single pool. Benner wasn't just beating the other bettors, he was overcoming that massive house edge with a comfortable margin to spare over and over and over again.
And we're not talking about one lucky weekend. This chart shows the result over 5 full years of betting. It's a perfect exponential curve. It shows you how a small, consistent edge, when you apply it over thousands of races, can compound into an absolute fortune.
But you know, finding the edge was only half the battle. Benter used a very sophisticated risk management formula called the Kelly Criterion to decide exactly how much to bet. The logic is actually pretty simple. When your model shows you have a big advantage, you bet a larger chunk of your bankroll. When the edge is small, you bet less. This is what protected his whole syndicate. It maximized their growth while making sure that one bad run of luck would never, ever wipe them out.
So what's the big takeaway here? This story isn't just about gambling. The principles Benter used are a timeless blueprint for finding an edge in literally any competitive market, even today in 2026.
Seriously, these lessons apply everywhere, from the stock market to crypto to sports betting. First, you have to replace your gut feelings with data-driven analysis. Second, actively hunt for the market's biases. Third, and this is key, don't try to fight the market. Find a way to fuse your unique data with its collective wisdom. And finally, you have to manage your risk. A profitable edge is totally worthless if you bet too much and go broke.
Look, Bill Benter proved that even in a market that seems unbeatable, a small, analytical edge can lead to absolutely extraordinary results. And he did all of this with the computing power of the 1990s. So the real question for us is, in today's world of big data and AI, what inefficiency are you going to find first?